Hello everybody! Welcome to this video that I made to present the results of my master thesis. Today we're gonna talk about trust, where it comes from and why it matters to economists. Oh, and we will talk about Italy as well. Ready to get started? I want to start by asking you a simple question. Think about people in general. Do you think most of them can be trusted? Or would you rather say you can't be too careful with people? Or, if you want an example, if you lost your wallet and a stranger found it, do you think it is likely you would get it back with the money inside? So, did you make up your mind? Then now please think about what reasons you had for your decision. Most scientists think it is mainly our experiences. Every one of us has a unique history of experiences that will shape its mind. It depends on the family one is brought up in, on the culture that somebody is used to, the neighborhoods that one daily passes, and the actions and reactions of people one meets there. And also the experiences with the police and law enforcement, with teachers and politicians. All of these experiences can be very different from person to person, depending where and how they grew up, their gender and skin color. And they will shape what we expect from other people. They will determine our choices. Do we trust others to cooperate with us? Or do we rather rely on ourselves, because others might take advantage of us? Many of the things mentioned before depend a lot on the place and society a person is born into. Experiences are shared, and so it will turn out that in some places and societies, people trust each other more than in others. In those places, cooperation outside the closest circle of family and friends will be easier. Economists call the amount of trust and social participation the social capital of a community. They had found that one had to add it to the other types of capital, which they used to study before to explain why some countries got richer than others. The first one was simple capital, their financial resources, possessions and machines in a place. And natural capital, that is, the natural resources and what one can get from land use. Then economists included human capital into their analysis, the factor that people and their education play a huge role in the development of a country. Social capital is a relatively new concept. The World Bank underlined its role for development in a report of 2002. The economist who made the concept famous was Robert Putnam. He published a book about the fact that associative life in the US was dissolving and that this was a threat to democracy. His argument is that in associations, people get used to trusting each other, even if they don't know each other so well and come from different contexts. Putnam says that these experiences build trust, makes people participate in society, and this way helps democracy work. Another really famous study of his linked social capital to economic growth, taking Italian regions as an example. Among the many things Putnam said, I will focus on two. First, that there are persisting differences between Italian regions in terms of social capital. Second, that participating in voluntary activities and associations build trust. But is that really the case? And why did the American Putnam even think about studying Italy? Well, the reason is, Italy is an interesting case for researchers concerned with institutions, because the different parts of the country have had different histories and institutions for a long time. Let's start with production. Agriculture was once predominant all over Italy, but while in the north the structures were relatively small and farmers often worked their own land, in the south the properties were huge latifundia owned by a few aristocrats, while the people that worked it were poor and had no possessions. As Italy was unified, in theory the rights and duties of the citizens of all places were equal, but right from the beginning, politics and institutions were more accessible and participatory than north than in the south. In the south, the Italian state became an ally of the landowners, and the ordinary people did not really identify with it. This led to a clientelist idea of politics right from the start. As Italy was industrialized, this happened mainly in the northwest. There, really big factories were built, and this was also the place where workers' movements started, as people began to identify with their new role and became politically active. These were the communist subcultures, and together with the local Catholic communities, they are examples of participatory associations like the ones Putnam talks about. In the north, there is also a tradition of associations providing services or cultural activities. While in the south, in the absence of a trustable state, people relied much more on their closest relatives when coping with the problems. Of course, this is all very simplified, and you can contact me if you are interested in a more detailed picture of my study. But for now, let's turn to the analysis I conducted. What I wanted to find out was whether the differences between the North and the South are also present nowadays, whether volunteering builds trust, and what other things determine how much people trust strangers. In order to do so, I analyzed data from the Italian National Statistics Office ISTAT. In a survey from 2013, people received special questions on volunteering. This is why I choose to use that year. The survey covers more than 20,000 individuals. And here is what I found. As for trust towards strangers, differences definitely exist until today. Overall, only a quarter of people gave answers that pointed to a middle or high trust level. The large majority of people, that is 3/4, have low trust. And we see that this is not evenly distributed. The regions that performed worst are Puglia, Sicily and Molise, all in the south. Here, well under 20% of people are high trusted. The highest concentration of high trusters is found in Trentino, South Tyrol and Valle d'Aosta, where more than a third of people are high trusters. Now let's look at volunteering. Overall, more than 15% of people said they volunteer. About 1/3 of them informally, the others in organized groups. The most common field of activity was connected to religion, followed by recreation and cultural activities. And also here we see large differences between regions. Volunteering is most common in the northeast and Tuscany. All the south is shaded in light red. The volunteering here is well below 10%. Finally, we look at how much people trust local institutions. Respondents quantify their trust towards the local government and the judicial system on a scale from 0 to 10. This time, the mean per region is reflected in shade. Numbers are really low overall. On a scale from 0 to 10, the maximum is just but 5. Again, Trentino and South Tyrol are highest up the ladder. Mistrust towards institutions is most spread in Lazio, Campania and Basilicata. So let's come back to this little person. What determines how much she will trust strangers? The results so far suggest it has to do with where she lives. I ran an econometric analysis to see whether this regional influence is really statistically significant. And turns out it is. Compared to the center, living in the northeast makes people trust the most, while in the south and the islands, people are likely to trust significantly less than in the center. But now let's look at the other factors we talked about in the beginning. Remember? Upbringing, culture, institutions, neighborhood. In the dataset I looked at, people also gave answers to many other questions. And I used these answers to see what other factors play a role in explaining trust. The effects that you will see here are ceteris paribus effects. That means if all the other factors are equal, you will trust more if you have higher education. And trust less if you have to worry about money a lot. Living in an unsafe neighborhood makes you trust less. And people who trust institutions, like the government, the the judicial system, also trusted strangers more. If all these things are equal for two people, a man and a woman, then the woman will probably trust more, my data said. And so will a person living in a larger city compared to someone who lives in a rural area. Finally, volunteers do indeed trust more, are the things equal. And now let's see whether the geographical effects from the beginning remain even if all these other factors are the same. So imagine 5 people that are equal in terms of education, gender, their feeling of safety, and all these other factors. And they lived in 5 areas. The 5 areas we talked about, the northeast, northwest, one in the center, one in the islands, and one in the south. So does where they live now still play a role in explaining trust? So do they still have different trust levels? Well, my analysis said that apparently it does only for the south compared to the center. That means that the regional differences we looked at can to a large extent be explained from all the other factors we talked about. However, in the south, there is an additional factor of lesser trust. So let's come back to Robert Putnam. We can congratulate him. His hypothesis that volunteering builds trust was corroborated by my study. And so was his finding that social capital diverges a lot over Italy. I hope I helped you understand a bit better why this is the case. Now, thank you so much for your attention. And of course, this video was super short and made things look a little bit more simple than they really are. So if you want the whole picture, please message me at